Hi there, my name is Lira. I am a finance major at the College of Business. I want to share a personal story with you today. I didn't think I had a money problem. I wasn't doing anything crazy. No luxury shopping, no expensive trips, no wild spending. Just normal college life. Coffee, food, gas, streaming subscriptions, a little shopping here and there. Nothing that felt irresponsible. But then one day, I checked my bank account, and I just stared at it because it didn't make sense. I had been working part-time. I knew money was coming in. So where did it all go? That question hit me harder than anything else. Where did my money go? And the scary part? I didn't have an answer, not even a rough idea. It wasn't one big purchase. It was everything. Little things, daily habits, stuff I didn't even notice. That's when I realized something important. I didn't have a spending problem. I had a visibility problem. I wasn't tracking anything. No plan, no structure, no system. And that's when I was introduced to something that completely changed how I think about money. Budgeting. Not in a boring, restrictive way, but as a way to finally understand my own life. Because budgeting is not about limiting yourself. It's about answering one simple question. Where is my money coming from, and where is it going? And once I started thinking that way, everything changed. So, after that moment, I told myself, okay, I need to figure this out. Not perfectly, just better than before. So I sat down one night with my laptop, opened my bank app, and for the first time, I actually looked at everything. Every transaction, every swipe, every little charge I had ignored. And honestly, it was uncomfortable. Because suddenly, all those small things weren't small anymore. They added up, fast. Coffee here, food delivery there, random subscriptions I forgot about. It wasn't one big mistake. It was 100 tiny ones. That's when I realized, if I didn't organize my money, it would keep disappearing. So I started searching for something simple, not complicated spreadsheets, not anything overwhelming, just something I could actually follow. And that's when I found it, the 50-30-20 rule. And I remember thinking, wait, that's it? It felt almost too simple. But the more I looked at it, the more it made sense. It basically said, take your income and split it into 3 parts. 50% for what you need, 30% for what you want, 20% for saving or paying off debt. That was it. No complicated formulas, no stress, just a structure. And for the first time, money didn't feel chaotic anymore. It felt organized. So I decided to try it. Not perfectly, just honestly. And that's when things started to get really interesting. Because once I actually applied it to my life, I learned something about myself that I wasn't expecting. So, I decided to try it. Nothing fancy, just simple numbers. I told myself, let's pretend I make $1,000 this month. Nice, clean number, easy to work with. Then I followed the rule. 50% for needs, so that's $500. Things I have to pay, rent, groceries, transportation, stuff I can't avoid. Then 30% for wants, that's $300. Things I enjoy, eating out, coffee, streaming, shopping. And finally, 20% for savings, that's $200. Money for my future, savings, emergency fund, or paying off debt. So on paper, it looked perfect. 500, 300, 200. Simple, balanced, controlled. And I remember thinking, okay, this is manageable. But then, I did something that changed everything. I compared it to what I was actually doing. And that's when it hit me. My needs weren't the problem. Those were pretty close. But my wants were way higher than $300. Way higher. And my savings? Almost nothing. Like, basically zero. Everything made sense. Why I always felt broke. Why my account kept dropping. Why I never had money left over. It wasn't random. It was predictable. I just never saw it before. And that moment, that was my first real wake-up call. Because now I had something I didn't have before. A clear picture. Not perfect, but honest. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's when I realized, budgeting isn't about being perfect. It's about being aware, because awareness is where control begins. So now I knew the problem. My spending wasn't random. It was just out of balance. Too much going to wants, almost nothing going to savings. And for a second, I thought I had to completely change my life. No more coffee, no more eating out, no more fun. And honestly, that felt miserable. I knew if I tried to do that, I wouldn't last a week. So instead, I made a different decision. I wasn't going to be perfect. I was just going to be better. Just a little. So I started small. Really small. The first thing I looked at? Coffee. Because it showed up everywhere in my transactions. $5 here, $6 there. Again and again. And I thought, okay, what if I just cut this in half? Not eliminate it, just reduce it. And that alone made a difference. Then I looked at food delivery. Not every day. So instead of saying never again, I told myself just fewer times. And something interesting started to happen. The more I paid attention, the more control I felt. Not restricted, not stressed, just aware. And those small changes, they started adding up. A little less spending here, a little more left over there. And for the first time, at the end of the month, I didn't feel confused. I didn't feel behind. I actually had money left. Not a lot, but something. And that something, it mattered, because it proved something to me. You don't need big changes to fix your finances. You just need consistent ones. And that's when I realized budgeting isn't about cutting everything out. It's about choosing what actually matters and adjusting the rest. Just when I started feeling confident, life happened. Of course, 1 month, everything cost more. Gas prices went up, my utility bill jumped. I had to buy textbooks I completely forgot about. And suddenly, my budget stopped working. At least that's what I thought. I remember opening my banking app again and feeling that same old panic. That feeling of great, I messed everything up. And honestly, I wanted to quit budgeting completely. Because in my mind, if the budget failed 1 month, then maybe I failed too. But then I realized something important. The problem wasn't the budget. The problem was that I assumed life would stay predictable. And it doesn't. Some expenses change every month. Utilities, gas, food, random school costs. Life moves, prices move, things happen. And that's when I learned something that completely changed the way I budgeted. You have to leave room for surprises. So instead of budgeting the minimum, I started building in a small cushion, just a little extra. If my utility bill usually cost around $80, I'd budget maybe $90. Not because I planned to spend more, but because I planned to be prepared. And weirdly, that changed everything emotionally. Because when something unexpected happened, I didn't panic anymore. I had room. And that was such a different feeling. Before budgeting, unexpected expenses felt like disasters. Now, they felt manageable. Not fun, but manageable. And honestly, that might have been the biggest shift of all. Because budgeting wasn't just changing my money anymore. It was changing my stress level. Before I started budgeting, saving money felt impossible. Like something other people did. People with high-paying jobs. People who had their lives together. Not stressed college students. Definitely not me. Because every month, I told myself the same thing. I'll save whatever is left over. But there was one problem. There was never anything left over. Something always came up. So saving became this thing I wanted to do, but never actually did. And then one day, I realized something simple. What if saving wasn't supposed to happen last? What if it was supposed to happen first? That idea completely changed the way I thought about money. So I tried something small. Every payday, I automatically moved a little money into savings. Nothing dramatic, just enough to start. And honestly, at first, it felt almost pointless. Like, what difference is this tiny amount even making? But then weeks passed, then months, and slowly that number started growing. Not because I suddenly became rich, not because I was perfect, but because I was consistent. And for the first time in my life, I had savings. Actual savings. Even seeing a few $100s sitting there changed the way I felt. Because now, unexpected expenses didn't feel quite as scary. I felt a little safer, a little more in control. And the craziest part, most of those savings came from tiny decisions. A little less spending here, a little automatic transfer there. That was it. And that's when I learned something important. Building savings is usually not about one huge decision. It's about small decisions, repeated consistently. And honestly, that lesson changed more than my bank account. A few months later, something happened. My car needed repairs. Of course it did. And not a tiny repair either. It was expensive. And I remember sitting there thinking, great, here we go again. Because the old version of me would have panicked immediately. I probably would have used a credit card, maybe ignored the problem for a while, maybe borrowed money. Honestly, I would have felt trapped. But this time, something was different. I had savings. Not a huge amount, not some giant emergency fund, but enough to help. And for the first time, an emergency felt like an inconvenience instead of a catastrophe. That feeling was unbelievable, because suddenly, I understood why people talk so much about emergency funds. It's not just about money, it's about stability. It's about breathing easier when life goes wrong. Because life will go wrong sometimes. Unexpected expenses happen, cars break down, phones stop working, medical bills appear, random costs show up out of nowhere. That's normal. The goal isn't to avoid every emergency, the goal is to be more prepared when they happen. And honestly, that experience changed my mindset completely. Before, saving felt optional. Now, it felt essential. And I finally understood why financial experts recommend building an emergency fund. Not because they expect perfection, but because emergencies become less scary when you're prepared. Even starting small matters, because financial security doesn't appear overnight. It grows slowly, one paycheck at a time, 1 month at a time. And standing there, paying that repair bill without completely falling apart financially, was the moment I realized all those small budgeting habits, they were actually working. Looking back, it's funny, because when I first started budgeting, I thought this was all about numbers, spreadsheets, percentages, tracking expenses. But honestly, it became about something much bigger. Peace of mind, confidence, control. Because before all of this, money felt stressful all the time, like something I was constantly trying to catch up with. And the worst part? I thought everyone else had it figured out except me. But now I know that's not true. Most people are learning as they go, just like I was. And honestly, I still make mistakes sometimes. I still overspend occasionally. I still have months that don't go perfectly. But budgeting taught me something important. One bad month doesn't mean failure. You adjust, you learn. Because financial success usually isn't about being perfect. It's about staying aware, staying consistent, and continuing to make small improvements over time. That's what really changes your life. Just better habits, repeated consistently. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from my story, it's this. Budgeting is not about restricting your life. It's about building a life where money causes less stress. A life where surprises feel manageable. A life where you slowly gain confidence instead of constantly feeling behind. And honestly, that feeling is worth so much more than I expected. So if you're listening to this right now and you feel overwhelmed financially, start small. Track your spending, be honest with yourself. Make one small improvement, then another. Because those small changes really do add up. And eventually, you look back and realize you've changed your entire financial life, one decision at a time. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next lesson.